My parents told me, you want to smile. Pay up. The quarter made a hollow clink as it hit the bottom of the mason jar on my mother's kitchen counter. There, I said, forcing my face back into its practiced neutral expression. Can I smile now? Mom didn't even look up from her phone. 30 seconds. Timer starts now. I let the corners of my mouth turn up, not too much, never too much, and felt that familiar surge of relief mixed with shame. 17 years old, and I was still paying my own parents for permission to be happy. The kitchen timer beeped. Neutral face. Back to the mask. Breakfast is getting cold, Alexis, Dad called from the dining room. Through the doorway, I could see him scrolling through his tablet, probably checking his investment portfolio. The Hartwell family fortune was built on real estate and good timing, according to the articles that occasionally featured us in Connecticut Life. What those articles didn't mention was how my parents had turned their own daughter's emotions into another revenue stream. I sat down across from him, cutting my Belgian waffle into precise squares. The silence stretched between us, broken only by the soft tap-tap of his fingers on the screen. Miranda's mother called yesterday, he said without looking up. Apparently you seemed withdrawn at the charity luncheon last weekend. My fork paused halfway to my mouth. Miranda Chen was my closest friend, though I use that term loosely. When you've been conditioned since age 5 to ration your smiles like they're made of gold, meaningful friendships become complicated. I was fine, I said. Fine doesn't build social connections. Fine doesn't reflect well on this family. Now he looked at me, his pale blue eyes calculating. Perhaps we need to revisit your emotional presentation training. The waffle turned to cardboard in my mouth. Emotional presentation training. That's what they called it when they first implemented the system, back when I was in kindergarten. Other kids got gold stars for good behavior. I got charged a quarter every time I laughed too loud, 50 cents for spontaneous dancing, and a full $1 if I cried without appropriate justification. I was managing my expressions responsibly, I said, using their language. Always use their language. Mom swept into the dining room, her designer heels clicking against the hardwood. Well, you'll have another chance to practice tonight. The Thorntons are coming for dinner, and I expect you to be charming. Appropriately charming. The Thorntons. Their son Jake was a sophomore at Yale, studying economics. I'd met him twice, both times at family gatherings where I'd spent more money on approved facial expressions than most kids spend on candy. Of course, I said. Should I prepare a budget? Dad's mouth twitched, almost a smile, but he wasn't subject to his own rules. $20 should suffice. We want the Thorntons to see you as engaging, but not frivolous. $20. For one evening of performing happiness. I calculated quickly, at 50 cents per genuine smile, $1 for actual laughter, that gave me maybe 25 moments of approved joy across 4 hours. I'd learned to be strategic about it, saving my budget for key moments when the adults expected reactions. I'll get the money from my account, I said. Good girl. I excused myself and headed upstairs to my room, each step feeling heavier than the last. 3 months. In 3 months, I'd turn 18 and gain access to my trust fund, money that had been accumulating since birth, funded by grandparents who died before they could see what their son had become. 3 months until I could afford to smile whenever I wanted. 3 months until I could afford to make them pay. My bedroom door clicked shut behind me, and I finally allowed myself to breathe. Here, in the only space where their cameras couldn't reach, we'd fought about that when I turned 16, one of the few battles I'd actually won, I could let my face relax completely. I pulled out my laptop and opened the spreadsheet I'd been maintaining since freshman year. Emotional expenses, 2024, read the header, with columns for date, type, amount, and context. The numbers were staggering when you added them up. Last month alone, $127.50. The month before, $98.75. Christmas had been brutal, $203 for a single day of family gatherings. But it was the context column that really told the story. Smiled at cousin's wedding announcement, $0.50, laughed at dad's joke about tax breaks, $1.00, asterisk cried when dog had to be put down, charged $2 for excessive display. Asterisk. That last one still made my chest tight. Buster had been 13, practically ancient for a golden retriever. I'd had him since I was 4, before the system fully took hold. He was probably the last living thing I'd been allowed to love freely. When the vet said it was time, I'd sobbed in the car afterward. Mom had actually started a timer to track my grief duration and billed me for going over their allotted 15 minutes. A text buzzed on my phone. Miranda, asterisk, coffee after school. You seemed really quiet at lunch. Asterisk. I stared at the message for a long moment. Miranda had been trying to get closer lately, ever since her parents' divorce finalized. She needed a friend, and God, I wanted to be one. But friendship required vulnerability, and vulnerability cost money I couldn't always afford. Asterisk, can't today. Family dinner with guests. Asterisk. Asterisk, the Thorntons again. Didn't you just see them at the country club? Asterisk. Miranda paid attention. Too much attention. It was dangerous and thrilling at the same time. Asterisk, yeah. Mom wants me to make a good impression. Asterisk. Asterisk, you always make good impressions. You're like, perfectly composed. Sometimes I wonder if you ever just let loose, you know. Asterisk. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. If only she knew that, letting loose, would cost me my allowance for a month. A knock interrupted my thoughts. Alexis. Mom's voice carried through the door. I'm coming in. I quickly minimized the spreadsheet and pulled up my AP economics homework as she entered without waiting for permission. She surveyed my room with the same critical eye she used for everything else, looking for flaws, inefficiencies, opportunities for correction. I wanted to discuss tonight's expectations more specifically, she said, perching on the edge of my desk chair like she was contaminating herself by being in my space. The Thorntons are considering Jake for an internship at their firm. Your father thinks a connection between you two might be beneficial. My stomach dropped. What kind of connection? Nothing inappropriate, of course. But Jake is going places. Economics degree, family money, the right social circle. You could do worse for your first serious relationship. First serious relationship. They were literally trying to arrange my love life, and they'd probably charge me extra for any genuine affection I showed him. I understand, I said. Good. I've increased tonight's budget to $35. I want you to seem interested, engaged. Laugh at his stories. Ask thoughtful questions. She stood, smoothing down her skirt. And Alexis? Wear the blue dress. It brings out your eyes. After she left, I opened the spreadsheet again and created a new entry, asterisk, performance for Thornton dinner, romantic interest, $35, parents trying to sell me. Asterisk. 89 days until my birthday. 89 days until I could tell Jake Thornton exactly what I thought of him. For free. The blue dress hung in my closet like a costume waiting for its actor. I'd worn it twice before, once to the Weatherby's anniversary party, $23 in emotional expenses, and once to my cousin's engagement dinner, $31, including a forced hug that cost me an extra $2 because Mom said I held on too long for appropriate familial affection. I was calculating tonight's strategic smile distribution when my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Asterisk, hey Alexis, it's Jake. Got your number from my mom. Looking forward to dinner tonight. Maybe we can sneak away from the parental units for a bit. Winking face asterisk. The winky emoji made my skin crawl. I screenshot the message, evidence for my growing digital file labeled documentation, then crafted a response that would satisfy my mother's expectations. Asterisk, looking forward to it too. See you at 7. Asterisk. Short, sweet, appropriately enthusiastic. And it only took me 3 tries to find the right tone. Another knock at my door. This time it was Dad, which was unusual. He rarely came upstairs unless someone was in trouble. Alexis, we need to talk. He sat heavily on my bed, and I noticed something different in his expression. Less controlled than usual. Almost nervous. I got a call from your guidance counselor today. Mrs. Peterson. My blood went cold. Mrs. Peterson had been asking questions lately about my emotional effect during college counseling sessions. She'd noticed that I seemed unusually restrained for a teenager and wanted to know if everything was all right at home. She's concerned about your college applications, Dad continued. Says your essays lack authentic voice and emotional resonance. She thinks you might need counseling to help you express yourself better. The irony was suffocating. I'll work on making them more expressive. That's not the point. He rubbed his temple. She mentioned possibly calling in a family counselor. Said sometimes when teenagers seem emotionally flat, it can indicate problems in the home environment. There it was. The crack in their perfect system. An outside authority figure asking the right questions. What did you tell her? I told her you were naturally reserved. Mature for your age. But she seemed. He paused, choosing his words carefully. Persistent. I kept my face neutral, but inside, something sparked to life. Mrs. Peterson had noticed. After years of thinking I was completely invisible, someone had actually seen through the mask. Maybe I could talk to her more about what she's looking for in the essays, I suggested. Dad's eyes sharpened. No. Your mother and I will handle this. We're scheduling a meeting with Mrs. Peterson next week. You'll attend, and you'll demonstrate that you're perfectly normal. Happy. Well-adjusted. How much? The question slipped out before I could stop it. What? How much will it cost me to be happy and well-adjusted for Mrs. Peterson? For a moment, Dad looked genuinely confused, like he'd forgotten that their system wasn't actually normal. Then his expression hardened. This is serious, Alexis. If social services gets involved. Social services. Now I was the one who was confused. I thought you said she wanted family counseling. Dad's face went pale. He'd said too much. If anyone starts asking questions about our parenting methods, he said slowly, you need to understand that everything we've done has been for your own good. Teaching you discipline. Self-control. Financial responsibility. I understand. But I was starting to understand something entirely different. They weren't just controlling, they were scared. Scared enough that a guidance counselor's questions had Dad looking like he'd been caught with his hand in a till. Good. Now get ready for dinner. And Alexis? He paused at my door. Tonight's budget just became non-negotiable. $50. I want the Thorntons to see you as the happiest, most well-adjusted teenager they've ever met. $50 to perform sanity. The spreadsheet was going to need a new category. The Thornton dinner was a masterclass in expensive performance art. I budgeted my $50 carefully, $10 for the initial greeting and small talk, $15 for dinner conversation, $20 for the getting to know Jake better portion, and $5 held in reserve for emergencies. What I hadn't budgeted for was Jake Thornton being significantly worse than I'd remembered. So Alexis, he said, cutting into his steak with unnecessary aggression, my mom says you're interested in economics. That's pretty advanced for a girl your age. $1 for a polite laugh. I find market theory fascinating. Yeah. What's your take on cryptocurrency? I could see Dad watching me from across the table, his expression expectant. Mom was nodding encouragingly at Mrs. Thornton, like we were performing monkeys doing tricks for peanuts. I think it's an interesting case study in speculative bubbles, I said, then forced another smile. $2 down, 48 to go. Jake leaned back in his chair. Wow, beauty and brains. You're like the whole package, aren't you? He winked again, and I wanted to throw my water glass at his smug face. Instead, I giggled. $3. The conversation dragged on through 2 more courses. Jake told increasingly boring stories about his fraternity brothers, his internship prospects, his new BMW. Each story required the appropriate facial expressions, impressed nods, 50 cents each, delighted laughter, $1 per instance, and what Mom called engaged listening posture, a flat fee of $2 per half hour. By the time we reached dessert, I'd spent $37 and felt like I'd aged 10 years. Why don't you kids go sit by the fireplace? Mrs. Thornton suggested. Let the adults talk boring business stuff. Dad caught my eye and tapped his watch. Translation, asterisk this is your moment. Make it count, asterisk. Jake sprawled across the leather sofa like he owned it, patting the cushion next to him. Come on, don't be shy. I perched on the edge, maintaining what I hoped was an interested but appropriate distance. You know, Jake said, moving closer, you're different from other girls our age. More, controlled. I like that. His hand landed on my knee. Shows good breeding. Good breeding, like I was a show dog. That's nice of you to say. $4 for the smile that accompanied those words. My parents think we'd make a good match. Similar backgrounds, you know. Same values. His hand moved higher up my leg. What do you think? I thought I was going to vomit. But vomiting would definitely be outside my budget. I think we should get to know each other better first, I managed, gently moving his hand back to neutral territory. Playing hard to get. I respect that. Jake's grin was predatory. Tell you what, why don't you come visit me at Yale sometime? I could show you around campus, introduce you to the right people. My fraternity throws amazing parties. That sounds wonderful. $5 for the enthusiasm in my voice. Great. I'll text you. He leaned in closer, and I could smell his cologne mixed with wine from dinner. You know, Alexis, I think this could be the start of something really beneficial. For both our families. Beneficial. Not romantic, not exciting, beneficial. Like a merger. From the dining room, I could hear our parents' voices growing more animated. Dad was laughing, actually laughing, for free, at something Mr. Thornton had said. The sound made my chest tight with a familiar mixture of longing and resentment. So it's settled then, Jake said, misinterpreting my silence as agreement. I'll plan something for next weekend. Just the two of us. My phone buzzed with a text. Miranda again, asterisk, emergency bestie meeting tomorrow. Found something weird in my mom's divorce papers. Need someone to talk to. Asterisk. I stared at the message, thinking about friendship and authenticity and what it meant to be there for someone without calculating the emotional cost. Miranda needed me. Actually needed me, not as a performance or a beneficial arrangement, but as a real person. Actually, I heard myself say to Jake, I'm pretty busy with college applications right now. His smile faltered. Come on, don't be like that. You can spare one weekend. I really can't. The words felt strange in my mouth, honest, unfiltered, completely budget-free. Jake's expression shifted from charming to cold in about 2 seconds. You know, I'm starting to think my parents were wrong about you. Maybe you're not as mature as they thought. $48 spent, $2 left, and suddenly I didn't care about any of it. Maybe they were, I said. And I smiled. For free. The silence that followed my free smile stretched like a rubber band about to snap. Jake stared at me with the kind of confusion reserved for malfunctioning equipment, while from the dining room came the sound of chairs scraping against hardwood. Everything all right in there? Dad's voice carried a warning I knew all too well. Perfect, Jake called back, but his eyes never left my face. Just getting to know each other better. I could hear my parents' footsteps approaching. In about 30 seconds, they'd round the corner expecting to see their daughter charming the Thornton heir with carefully budgeted enthusiasm. Instead, they'd find me sitting here having just committed the cardinal sin of their household, expressing genuine emotion without payment. You know what? Jake said, his voice dropping to a whisper. I think I misjudged you. You're not mature, you're just weird. The word should have stung. A year ago, they would have sent me running to my room to calculate how much it would cost to cry about it. But something had shifted in the moment I'd smiled for free. Like a muscle I'd forgotten I had suddenly remembering how to flex. Jake, darling, how are you two getting along? Mrs. Thornton swept into the living room with Mom right behind her, both wearing expressions of aggressive hopefulness. Great, Jake said, his fake charm snapping back into place like a mask. Alexis was just telling me about her college plans. Mom's eyes found mine, searching for confirmation that I was staying unscripted. I gave her the smallest nod, and watched some of the tension leave her shoulders. Wonderful, she said. Alexis has been so looking forward to tonight. $50 of looking forward, to be precise. Though now it was technically 52, thanks to my unauthorized emotional display. I'd be hearing about that later. Dad appeared in the doorway, checking his Rolex. I hate to break up the young love, he said with a chuckle that probably cost him nothing, but it's getting late, and Alexis has school tomorrow. Of course, Mr. Thornton agreed. Jake, we should head back to the hotel. As the adults moved through their goodbye rituals, handshakes and air kisses and promises to do this again soon, Jake caught my arm. Walk me to the door, he asked, loud enough for everyone to hear. It sounded like a request, but his grip on my arm said otherwise. In the foyer, while our parents clustered around the coat closet, Jake leaned close enough that I could feel his breath on my ear. I don't know what game you're playing, he whispered, but my family doesn't appreciate being jerked around. Neither do I. I'm not playing any games. Right. His laugh was sharp. Look, princess, I've done my research. Your trust fund is substantial, but it's not Thornton-level money. You need this connection more than I do. The casual cruelty of it, the assumption that I was a commodity to be acquired based on financial calculations, should have been shocking. Instead, it felt familiar. This was just the Hartwell family dinner table with different players. Maybe I don't want the connection, I said quietly. Jake's grip tightened. Maybe you don't have a choice. Is there a problem? Dad's voice cut through our whispered conversation like a blade. No problem at all, Mr. Hartwell, Jake said, immediately releasing my arm. Just making plans for next weekend. Dad's eyes moved between us, calculating. Excellent. Alexis loves making new plans. Another lie I'd have to pay for later. The Thorntons finally left at 9:47 p.m. I checked the time because I knew I'd need it for my records. The front door had barely closed before Mom turned on me with the expression she usually reserved for servants who'd broken her good china. Kitchen. Now. I followed her past the dining room where Dad was already pouring himself a brandy, past the breakfast nook with its ceramic rooster collection, to the island where my mason jar sat waiting like a hungry mouth. $52, Mom said without preamble. I know. Do you? Because from where I was standing, it looked like you were trying to sabotage your own future. She opened the jar and held it out expectantly. The Thorntons are a good family, Alexis. Connected. Stable. Jake is everything we could want for you. I pulled three $20 bills from my wallet, money I'd earned from tutoring younger kids in math, back when I thought saving up might buy me more freedom instead of just different kinds of captivity. He called me weird, I said, feeding the bills into the jar. Then you weren't performing correctly. The jar clinked as Mom screwed the lid back on. We'll practice more before the next dinner. Next dinner. Saturday night. The Thorntons invited us to their club. Jake specifically requested that you come. Mom's smile was sharp as broken glass. Apparently you made quite an impression. I thought about Jake's whispered threats, his casual assessment of my net worth, the way he touched my leg like I was property he was considering purchasing. What if I don't want to go? The question hung in the air between us like smoke. Mom's smile didn't waver, but something cold flickered behind her eyes. Want? She repeated. Alexis, darling, when have your wants ever been part of this equation? 88 days until my 18th birthday. 88 days until I could want things without permission. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Jake's predatory smile and heard Mom's voice. When have your wants ever been part of this equation? At 2:17 a.m., I gave up and opened my laptop. The spreadsheet glowed in the darkness, rows of documented emotional extortion stretching back years. But tonight, I created a new document. Evidence log, day 1. Asterisk Saturday, March 9th, 2024. Charged $52 for mandatory performance with Jake Thornton. Parents arranging romantic relationship for financial benefit. Jake made physical contact without consent, threatened consequences for non-compliance. Mother explicitly stated my personal desires are irrelevant to family decisions asterisk. I was typing when my phone buzzed. A text from Jake at 2:23 a.m. asterisk, sweet dreams, princess. Can't wait for Saturday. Wear something that shows you're worth the investment money bag asterisk. The money emoji made my stomach turn. I screenshot the message and added it to a new folder, Jake Thornton, harassment documentation. Then I did something I'd never done before. I googled my own parents. Richard and Catherine Hartwell pulled up the usual society page photos and business articles. But when I added parenting and children to the search, something unexpected appeared on page 3, a blog post from 2019 titled The Hartwell Method, Teaching Children Emotional Intelligence Through Financial Accountability. My blood went cold as I clicked the link. Many parents struggle with children who are too emotional, too impulsive, too demanding of attention, Mom had written. Asterisk, what if there was a way to teach self-regulation while building financial literacy? The Hartwell method transforms every emotional outburst into a learning opportunity, asterisk. She turned our family's abuse into a parenting philosophy. There were comments from other wealthy parents asking for details, expressing interest in implementing similar systems. One comment made me physically nauseous. Asterisk, brilliant approach. How do you handle holidays and special occasions? My 8-year-old gets so excited about Christmas that she's impossible to manage. Asterisk. Mom's response, asterisk, holiday rates are triple standard charges. Children learn quickly that special occasions require special self-control. Last Christmas, our daughter earned back her emotional expenses through improved behavior within 2 weeks. Asterisk. I remember that Christmas. I'd been 14, so excited about getting a laptop that I'd hugged Dad spontaneously when I opened it. The charge, $9 for excessive physical affection and uncontrolled joy display. I'd spent my entire Christmas break walking dogs and babysitting to earn the money back. They'd turned my childhood into a case study. A soft knock at my door made me slam the laptop shut. Alexis. Dad's voice, unusually gentle. I saw your light on. He entered without waiting for permission, wearing his leather slippers and navy robe. In the dim glow from my desk lamp, he looked older than usual. Tired. Trouble sleeping? I nodded, not trusting my voice. Dad sat on my desk chair, closer than he'd been since I was little. Tonight was important, sweetheart. More important than you might realize. Because of the Thornton money. Because of stability. Security. He leaned forward, and I caught a whiff of brandy on his breath. Do you know what it's like out there for people without connections? Without protection? No. It's brutal. Unforgiving. Every day is a struggle to prove your worth. His eyes found mine in the darkness. Everything your mother and I have done, the lessons, the structure, the discipline, it's all been to prepare you for a world that won't give you anything for free. But you charge me for smiling, Dad. For being happy. We charge you for uncontrolled emotion. There's a difference. He stood, smoothing down his robe. Happiness without purpose is just self-indulgence. We've taught you that joy should be earned, celebrated consciously. That's a gift, Alexis. A gift that came with a price tag. The Thorntons see potential in you, he continued. Jake sees potential. Don't waste it because you're feeling rebellious. After he left, I reopened the laptop and found 17 more comments on Mom's blog post. Parents from Connecticut, New York, California, all asking for consultation fees, wondering if the Hartwell method could fix their overly emotional children. At the bottom of the post was an update from 6 months ago, asterisk, due to overwhelming interest, I'm now offering private consultations. Please email for rates and availability. Asterisk. She was selling our trauma to other families. My hands shook as I created a new folder, blog evidence. Then I started downloading everything, screenshots, cached pages, archived versions. If Mom thought she could monetize our dysfunction, she was about to learn that information worked both ways. 87 days until I turned 18. But maybe I didn't have to wait that long to start fighting back. The next morning brought an email that changed everything. Subject, confidential inquiry, Hartwell family. From j.martinez@childservices.cte.gov. Ms. Hartwell. Asterisk, this is Janet Martinez from Connecticut Department of Children and Families. We've received some concerns regarding your family situation and would like to schedule a brief interview. Please respond at your earliest convenience, asterisk. Best regards. Janet Martinez, LCSW. I stared at the screen in my school's computer lab, reading the message 3 times before it sank in. Someone had reported my parents. Mrs. Peterson hadn't just been asking casual questions, she'd been building a case. My phone buzzed with a text from Mom, asterisk, family meeting tonight at 6 p.m. Mandatory attendance. Bring your account ledger. Asterisk. The account ledger. The detailed record of every emotional transaction I'd ever made, meticulously maintained since I was 8 years old. They'd insisted I keep it as part of learning, financial responsibility, but now I realized it was evidence. Evidence of exactly what, I wasn't sure, but something told me tonight's meeting wasn't going to be about Jake Thornton or Saturday's dinner plans. Alexis. Miranda appeared next to my computer terminal, looking concerned. You've been staring at that screen for like 10 minutes. Everything okay? I quickly minimized the email. Just college application stuff. Right. She didn't believe me, and I couldn't blame her. I'd been deflecting her questions for 3 years. Look, I know you said you were busy yesterday, but I really need to talk to someone. Can we grab lunch off campus? Leaving campus during lunch required a permission slip. Getting a permission slip required calling home. Calling home would cost me $3 just to ask, plus whatever they decided my tone was worth. But Miranda looked genuinely distressed, and for once, I found myself caring more about her feelings than my budget. Let's go to the library instead, I suggested. Private study room. 20 minutes later, we were seated across from each other in study room C, surrounded by college prep books that neither of us was reading. Miranda had been crying, her mascara was smudged despite obvious repair attempts. My mom's lawyer found some weird stuff in my dad's financial records, she said without preamble. Like, really weird. Payments to something called Hartwell Family Consulting going back almost 2 years. The blood drained from my face. Hartwell Family Consulting? Yeah, do you know what that is? The amounts are small, like $50 or $100 a month, but they're consistent. And they started right around the time my parents began fighting about my behavior. I thought about Mom's blog post, her offer of private consultations, the comments from parents asking for help with their overly emotional children. Miranda, what kind of behavior were they fighting about? Stupid stuff. Like, Dad thought I was too moody. Too dramatic. He kept saying I needed to learn self-control, that I was spoiled. She wiped her nose with a tissue. Then suddenly he started implementing all these weird rules. Like, I wasn't allowed to cry for more than 5 minutes at a time, and I had to ask permission before getting excited about anything. The room felt like it was spinning. Did he ever make you pay money for breaking the rules? Miranda looked confused. Pay money? No, but... She paused, thinking. He did start this thing where I had to put a quarter in a jar every time I displayed excessive emotion. But that was just symbolic, you know. To teach me mindfulness. Symbolic. That's what they told her parents. That it was just a learning exercise, not genuine financial punishment. But I knew better, I knew exactly where that jar system came from and whose idea it had been. Miranda, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me. She nodded. When did your parents start having problems? Like, exactly when? Maybe 18 months ago. Dad came home from some parents' seminar talking about emotional regulation and teaching kids real-world consequences. Why? A parents' seminar. Mom had been giving seminars. My hands were shaking as I pulled out my phone and opened the photos I'd taken of her blog. Miranda, I think our families might be more connected than we realized. I showed her the screen, watching her expression change from confusion to recognition to horror as she read her own story reflected in my mother's case studies. Anonymous, sanitized, but unmistakably familiar. Oh my God, she whispered. Oh my God, Alexis, your mom did this. To your family too. Not just my family. She's been selling the system to other parents. Teaching them how to control their kids by making emotion too expensive to afford. Miranda grabbed my arm. We have to tell someone. This is insane. I think someone already knows, I said, thinking about the email from Child Services. But Miranda, I need you to promise me something. Don't let your parents know that you know. Not yet. If they think we're comparing notes. They'll shut it down, she finished. Cover their tracks. We sat in silence for a moment, both processing the magnitude of what we discovered. Then Miranda asked the question I'd been dreading. How bad was it for you? Really? I thought about the mason jar, the spreadsheets, the 17 years of paying for permission to feel human emotions. I thought about Jake Thornton and arranged relationships and parents who saw their daughter's happiness as a revenue stream. Bad, I said. Really, really bad. Miranda's eyes filled with fresh tears, free tears, tears that nobody was charging her for. We're going to stop this, she said. Whatever it takes, we're going to make sure no other kids go through what we did. For the first time in years, I felt something that had nothing to do with my emotional budget, hope. The family meeting at 6 p.m. felt like a tribunal. Mom and Dad sat across from me at the dining room table, my account ledger spread between us like evidence at a crime scene. 17 years of emotional transactions, documented in my own careful handwriting. We received an interesting email today, Dad said, his voice carefully neutral. From Child Services. I kept my face blank, a skill that had cost me thousands of dollars to perfect. It seems someone has been spreading stories about our family, Mom added, her manicured fingers drumming against the mahogany table. Stories that paint our parenting methods in a very unflattering light. I don't know anything about that, I said. Dad opened his laptop and turned it toward me. On the screen was a printout of my emotional expense spreadsheet, the private one I kept on my computer, the one with the detailed context notes about their cruelty. My stomach dropped. They'd been monitoring my laptop. Parents trying to sell me, Dad read aloud from my Jake Thornton entry. Charged $2 for excessive grief over dog's death. 17 years of paying for permission to be human. He looked up at me with cold eyes. Very creative writing, Alexis. I was just keeping track. You were building a case, Mom interrupted. Against your own family. Do you have any idea how this looks to outsiders? How it could be misinterpreted? Misinterpreted. Like there was some innocent explanation for charging your child money to smile. The woman from Child Services wants to interview you next Tuesday, Dad continued. Alone. She's particularly interested in discussing your emotional development and our family's communication patterns. They were scared. I could see it beneath their controlled expressions, the same fear that had crept into Dad's voice when he'd mentioned Mrs. Peterson asking questions. What do you want me to tell her? I asked. The truth, Mom said smoothly. That you're a happy, well-adjusted teenager from a loving family. That our methods have taught you valuable lessons about self-control and financial responsibility. That you've never been harmed or neglected. And if I don't? The silence stretched between us like a wire pulled taut. Then Dad leaned forward, his voice dropping to the tone he used for serious business negotiations. Alexis, sweetheart, I think you're forgetting something important. Your trust fund doesn't unlock automatically when you turn 18. It requires our signatures as co-trustees. Our approval. My blood turned to ice. That's not, the lawyer said. The lawyer said a lot of things. But trust documents are complicated, and there are provisions for cases where the beneficiary might not be ready for such responsibility. Mom's smile was razor-sharp. Extended oversight. Delayed distribution. We have options. They were threatening to steal my future. My only escape route, blocked by legal fine print I'd never bothered to read carefully. Of course, Dad continued conversationally, none of that would be necessary if Child Services concludes their investigation quickly. If they determine that their concerns were unfounded. If someone simply clarified the misunderstanding. I stared at my account ledger, at years of meticulous record-keeping that had somehow become a weapon pointed at my own chest. Every documented cruelty was now evidence of my instability, my tendency toward dramatic interpretation. I understand, I said quietly. Good girl. Mom reached across the table and closed the ledger with a soft thud. Now, we should discuss Saturday's dinner with the Thorntons. Jake called today, apparently he's very excited to see you again. Of course he was. He'd probably already started planning how to spend my dowry. I'd like to increase your emotional budget for the evening, Dad said, pulling out his checkbook. $100 should cover anything the evening might require. $100 to perform love for a boy who threatened me. To smile and laugh and flirt my way into a relationship that would trap me as effectively as my parents had. But now I knew something they didn't, I wasn't the only victim keeping records. Miranda's parents had been paying Hartwell Family Consulting for almost 2 years. Which meant there were financial transactions, paper trails, evidence that went beyond one teenager's emotional expense spreadsheet. And if Miranda's family had hired lawyers for the divorce, those lawyers might be very interested in where their client's money had been going. $100 sounds perfect, I said, accepting Dad's check with steady hands. They thought they'd cornered me. But they'd forgotten the most important lesson they'd ever taught me, everything has a price, and information is the most valuable currency of all. I had 6 days until the Child Services interview. 6 days to turn their own system against them. The game was far from over. The Child Services interview was scheduled for 3:30 p.m. Tuesday, which gave me exactly 72 hours to execute what I was already thinking of as Operation Mason Jar. Step 1 had been easier than expected. During lunch on Monday, I'd approached 3 other students whose parents moved in my family's social circle, kids I'd noticed becoming quieter, more controlled over the past year or two. The conversation starter was simple. Hey, has your family been doing any weird new discipline stuff lately? Sarah Chen, Miranda's cousin, had gone pale when I mentioned emotional regulation exercises. You mean the mood tracking, she'd whispered. Where I have to log every feeling and justify why it was appropriate for the situation. Marcus Weatherby had actually laughed, but it was the bitter kind. My dad makes me write essays now. 500 words every time I get unnecessarily upset about something. I've written 12 essays about why crying over my dog's surgery was an overreaction. Emma Thornton, Jake's younger sister, which explains so much, had just stared at me with the hollow expression I recognized from my own mirror. They don't make me pay money, she'd said quietly. They just take things away. Every time I smile without permission, or laugh too loud, or get excited about anything. My room is basically empty now. 4 families. 4 variations of the same system. All connected by monthly payments to Hartwell Family Consulting. By Tuesday morning, I had a manila folder containing screenshots of Mom's blog and consultation emails, bank records Miranda had copied from her parents' divorce proceedings, testimonials from 3 other affected students, and a timeline showing the correlation between consultation payments and behavioral changes in all our families. I also had Jake Thornton's increasingly aggressive texts from the weekend, including several that made his intentions very clear. Saturday can't come soon enough. Dad says if we hit it off, there might be some business partnerships between our families. Winking face, and hope you're ready to make this worth everyone's investment. But the smoking gun had come from an unexpected source. Mrs. Peterson had pulled me aside that morning before first period. Alexis, I want you to know that whatever happens in your interview today, you have support here. Several of us have noticed changes in some of our students over the past couple years. Changes. Emotional flattening. Anxiety around normal teenage behaviors. And we've started comparing notes. She handed me a folded paper. If you need this information, it might be helpful. The paper contained a list of 12 names, students whose parents had attended Mom's parenting seminars or hired her for private consultation. 12 kids who'd all shown similar behavioral changes within months of their parents implementing Hartwell method techniques. Mrs. Peterson had been building her own case. At 3:25 p.m., I sat in the school counseling office across from Janet Martinez, a woman in her 40s with kind eyes and a recorder app open on her phone. This conversation is confidential, Alexis. Nothing you tell me will be shared with your parents without your permission, unless there's immediate danger involved. Do you understand? Yes, ma'am. Good. Now, I'd like to start by asking about your family's approach to discipline and emotional expression. I opened my manila folder and placed it on the table between us. Ms. Martinez, how familiar are you with financial fraud? Her eyebrows shot up. That's not typically what we discuss in these interviews. What if I told you my parents have been operating an unlicensed child psychology practice, using their own daughter as a test subject, and selling abusive techniques to other wealthy families while documenting the whole thing online? Janet Martinez leaned forward, suddenly very interested. What if I told you I can prove it? The recorder app cast a soft red glow between Janet Martinez and me as I spread the contents of my manila folder across her desk. Bank statements, screenshots, text messages, testimonials, 17 years of documented abuse laid out like evidence at trial. These are consultation payments from the Chin family, I said, pointing to highlighted transactions. $50 a month starting January 2023. That's exactly when Miranda's cousin Sarah started having to justify her emotions in writing. Janet's pen moved steadily across her notepad. And you believe these payments are connected to changes in parenting techniques? I don't believe it. I can prove it. I pulled up Mom's blog on my phone. This post from March 2023 describes, Case Study B, a family struggling with their daughter's excessive emotional displays. The timeline matches perfectly with the Weatherby payments, and Marcus Weatherby told me yesterday his dad started the SA punishment system right after attending one of my mother's seminars. Alexis, these are serious allegations. You're suggesting your mother is operating without proper licensing. She's not a licensed therapist at all. I checked. I'd spent Sunday afternoon diving through Connecticut's professional licensing database. Catherine Hartwell has a bachelor's degree in art history from Vassar. No psychology training, no counseling certification, no legal authority to be giving parenting advice for money. Janet's expression had shifted from professional interest to genuine alarm. How many families are we talking about? At least 12 that I can document. Mrs. Peterson thinks there might be more. I pulled out the list of affected students. All wealthy families, all with teenagers showing similar behavioral changes. Emma Thornton hasn't smiled at school in 8 months. Sarah Chen had a panic attack during Spirit Week because she was afraid cheering too loudly would get her in trouble. Marcus Weatherby asked his English teacher if he needed permission to laugh at Shakespeare. And your own situation? I pulled out my account ledger, the real one, not the sanitized version my parents had shown me. 17 years of paying for permission to feel emotions. Quarter for a smile, dollar for a laugh, $2 if I cried without their approval. Last month alone cost me $127.50. Janet flipped through the pages, her face growing paler with each entry. Asterisk charged $9 for excitement over college acceptance letter, asterisk, she read aloud. Asterisk $15 for crying during grandmother's funeral because grief exceeded allotted time limit, asterisk. They're planning to arrange my marriage, I continued, showing her Jake's texts. The Thornton family sees me as a business investment, and my parents are marketing me accordingly. Saturday's dinner is essentially a final negotiation. Saturday? As in, 4 days from now. Yes, ma'am. And they've threatened to block access to my trust fund if I don't comply with their plans. They're co-trustees, and apparently there are provisions for keeping the money away from beneficiaries they deem unstable. Janet set down her pen and looked directly at me. Alexis, I need to ask you something, and I want you to be completely honest. Are you afraid of your parents? The question hung in the air. 17 years of conditioning told me to say no, to protect the family image, to minimize the damage. But I thought about Emma Thornton's empty bedroom and Marcus Weatherby's mandatory essays and Miranda's father learning to weaponize emotion through my mother's guidance. I'm afraid of what they'll do to other kids, I said. The parents paying for consultations think they're getting professional help. They don't know they're implementing techniques designed by someone who charged her 5-year-old daughter money for laughing too loudly at cartoons. Janet closed the folder and leaned back in her chair. I'm going to need copies of all this documentation. And Alexis? I'm also going to need you to be very careful for the next few days. Don't let your parents know we've had this conversation. What happens now? Now I make some phone calls. To the state licensing board, to the families involved, and to some colleagues who specialize in cases like this. She paused. And I want you to know, what your parents did to you, what they're doing to other children, it's not your fault. None of it. The words hit me harder than expected. 17 years of believing I was the problem, that my emotions were too expensive, too inconvenient, too much. Ms. Martinez? How long before? I can't give you exact timelines, but I will say this, Saturday's dinner might not go exactly the way your parents are planning. For the first time in months, I smiled without calculating the cost. Wednesday morning brought chaos disguised as normalcy. Mom was humming while she made her protein smoothie, actual humming, the kind of unconscious happiness she'd charged me 50 cents for since kindergarten. Dad sat at the breakfast table scrolling through his phone with an expression I'd never seen before, genuine satisfaction mixed with something that looked almost like relief. Good news, sweetheart, he said without looking up. Jake called last night. He's moved Saturday's dinner to Friday instead. Apparently he can't wait another day to see you again. My blood turned cold. Friday was tomorrow. Janet Martinez had said she needed time to make calls, contact families, build a proper case. Moving the timeline up by 24 hours could destroy everything. Why the change? I asked, keeping my voice carefully neutral. Business opportunity, Mom explained, joining us at the table with her smoothie. The Thorntons want to finalize some partnership agreements this weekend, and Jake suggested combining the business dinner with your social engagement. Partnership agreements. They weren't even pretending this wasn't a transaction anymore. I've increased your emotional budget to $150, Dad continued, finally meeting my eyes. This evening is crucial for our family's future, Alexis. I trust you understand the importance of making an excellent impression. $150. Enough to buy 3 hours of sustained happiness or 30 minutes of convincing romantic interest. They were expecting me to sell myself completely. My phone buzzed with a text from Miranda, emergency. Meet me in the parking lot before first period. I should get to school, I said, standing carefully. Too fast would suggest anxiety, too slow would look like reluctance. After 17 years, I'd mastered the art of emotional camouflage. Have a wonderful day, darling, Mom called after me. And remember, practice makes perfect. Tonight's performance needs to be flawless. Miranda was pacing beside her Honda Civic when I found her, clutching a manila envelope that looked remarkably similar to the one I'd shown Janet Martinez yesterday. We have a problem, she said without preamble. My dad's lawyer called this morning. Someone's been asking questions about the Hartwell consulting payments, and now Dad wants to schedule an emergency session with your mom. Today. After school. What kind of emergency session? Damage control, I think. The lawyer mentioned something about unified messaging and protecting client confidentiality. Miranda's hands were shaking. Alexis, I think they know we talked to someone. I thought about Mom's unusual happiness this morning, Dad's satisfied expression, the suddenly accelerated timeline for my dinner with Jake. They weren't just scared, they were actively trying to stay ahead of the investigation. What's in the envelope? More bank records. My mom's divorce attorney found payments to something called Hartwell Crisis Management starting 2 days ago. Small amounts, but from at least 8 different families. Miranda's voice dropped to a whisper. I think your parents are coaching everyone on what to say if child services comes asking questions. Crisis management. They'd turned their child abuse consultation business into a cover-up operation, charging other families for help hiding the same techniques they were being investigated for. My phone buzzed again. This time it was a number I didn't recognize. This is Janet Martinez. Can you call me immediately? New developments. I have to make a call, I told Miranda. Can you give me 5 minutes? Janet answered on the first ring. Alexis, thank God. We have a situation. 3 of the families you identified have contacted the state licensing board this morning, claiming they've never heard of Hartwell Family Consulting and demanding the investigation be dropped. My stomach dropped. They're lying. Either lying or being coached. But here's the problem, without family cooperation, building a case becomes much more difficult. These parents are closing ranks. I could hear papers shuffling in the background. I need to ask you something, and I need you to think carefully before answering. Is there any way your parents could have known about our conversation yesterday? I thought about the laptop monitoring, the sudden change in dinner plans, Mom's cheerful mood this morning despite facing a potential child services investigation. My parents have been monitoring my computer, I said slowly. They found my private expense spreadsheets. If they've been tracking my online activity, then they might know you've been researching them, talking to other students, building documentation. Janet's voice was grim. Alexis, I think your parents are several steps ahead of us. The parking lot suddenly felt too exposed, too open. I could see other students arriving for first period, chattering and laughing with the kind of casual joy that had cost me thousands of dollars over the years. Normal teenagers living normal lives while I stood here realizing that my escape plan might be crumbling in real time. What do I do about tomorrow night? I asked. Tomorrow night? The dinner with the Thorntons. They moved it up to Friday, and they're expecting me to. I couldn't finish the sentence. Absolutely not. I'm calling your parents today and Ms. Martinez, if you call them now, they'll know for certain that I talked to you. And they've already threatened to block my trust fund access if I don't cooperate. My hands were shaking now, matching Miranda's nervous energy. I think I have to go through with it. Alexis, that's not safe. If they're this desperate to control the narrative, then I need to document everything. Record conversations, save text messages, get Jake Thornton on the record talking about business partnerships and family investments. The plan was forming even as I spoke. If the other families won't cooperate with the investigation, maybe I can get evidence that's too clear to deny. The silence on the other end stretched long enough that I wondered if the call had dropped. Finally, Janet spoke. If you're going to do this, and I want to be clear that I'm not officially recommending it, you need backup. People who know where you are, what you're doing, and what to do if something goes wrong. I have people. Good. And Alexis? Whatever happens tomorrow night, remember that you're not alone anymore. The investigation doesn't end just because some parents are trying to rewrite history. After I hung up, Miranda was staring at me with an expression caught between admiration and terror. You're really going to do it, she said. You're going to walk into their trap and turn it inside out. I looked at my phone, calculating. 26 hours until the dinner. 26 hours to prepare for what might be the performance of my life, except this time, instead of pretending to be happy, I'd be pretending to be defeated. I've been paying to perform emotions for 17 years, I said. Tomorrow night, they're finally going to get their money's worth. Thursday night, I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Jake's predatory smile and heard Mom's voice explaining to internet strangers how to charge children for crying. At 3 a.m., I gave up and opened my laptop to review the recording app Miranda had helped me install. Disguised as a study timer, it would capture audio while appearing to track homework sessions. My phone buzzed with another text from Jake. Can't wait for tomorrow night, princess. Dad's bringing the partnership contracts. Hope you're ready to make this official ring. The ring emoji made my skin crawl, but I screenshot it anyway. Evidence folder now contained 47 messages spanning 2 weeks, documenting everything from casual misogyny to explicit discussions of my market value. At breakfast, Mom was practically glowing. I spoke with Catherine Weatherby yesterday evening, she said, buttering her whole grain toast with surgical precision. Apparently Marcus has been spreading some very concerning stories about our family methods. We had a lovely conversation about teenage imagination and the importance of consistent messaging. Translation, she'd coached Marcus's mother on damage control, probably for a fee. The Chen family needed similar guidance, Dad added, not looking up from his financial reports. Amazing how these custody disputes can make children so creative with their memories. They'd weaponized Miranda's parents' divorce, turning family trauma into leverage for their cover-up operation. I wondered how much they'd charge the Chens for help discrediting their own daughter's testimony. Tonight's dinner should put all these silly rumors to rest, Mom continued. Once you and Jake announce your engagement, people will see what a stable, successful family we really are. My fork froze halfway to my mouth. Engagement? Well, obviously not immediately, Dad said with the tone he used for explaining basic economics to children. But Jake plans to give you a promise ring tonight. Something to formalize the understanding between our families. A promise ring. Like a down payment on a purchase they hadn't completed yet. The Thorntons are hosting at their private dining room at the club, Mom added. Very intimate. Just immediate family and a few key business associates. Jake specifically requested that you wear the sapphire dress, apparently blue is his favorite color. The sapphire dress cost $800 and made me look like a porcelain doll. Perfect for their purposes. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Miranda, crisis management meeting happening right now. All the parents are here. Sarah says her dad just got back from media training with your mom. Media training. They were preparing for the story to go public, getting their narratives aligned before anyone else could speak up. I quickly typed back, how many families? At least 8 cars in our driveway. My dad's charging them $200 each for legal consultation fees. Your mom's getting paid to teach them how to lie, and my dad's getting paid to make the lies sound legal. $200 per family meant they'd earned at least $1,600 this morning alone. They were profiting from the cover-up almost as much as they had from the original abuse consulting. Another message from Miranda, Emma Thornton is here with her parents. She looks terrified. I thought about Jake's little sister, about her empty bedroom and hollow expression. If Emma was at the crisis management meeting, it meant the Thorntons were fully invested in protecting the system that had broken her. Alexis, darling, you seem distracted, Mom observed. I hope you're not having second thoughts about tonight. No second thoughts, I said, meeting her eyes directly. I'm looking forward to it. For the first time in years, that was completely true. Just not for the reasons she thought. At school, word had somehow spread that tonight was my big night with Jake Thornton. 3 different people congratulated me on my engagement, and 2 teachers mentioned how grown-up I seemed lately. The rumor mill had transformed my arranged relationship into a fairy tale romance. Mrs. Peterson pulled me aside after AP Economics. I heard about tonight, she said carefully. If you need anything at all, you call me. Day or night. I showed her the recording app on my phone. I'm ready. Good. And Alexis? Whatever happens, remember that courage isn't the absence of fear. It's acting in spite of it. 6 hours until dinner. 6 hours until I walked into their carefully orchestrated trap and started dismantling it from the inside. The Thornton Country Club's private dining room looked like a stage set for my own execution. Crystal chandeliers cast everything in golden light, making the mahogany table gleam like an altar. I counted 8 adults clustered around cocktails, my parents, the Thorntons, and 4 people I didn't recognize but whose expensive suits screamed legal team. Jake stood when I entered, wearing a navy blazer that probably cost more than most people's cars. There she is, he announced, crossing the room to kiss my cheek. You look absolutely perfect. The sapphire dress rustled as I forced myself not to flinch away from his touch. Thank you. You look very handsome too. $5 for the compliment, though I wasn't keeping track anymore. Tonight, everything was free, and everything would cost them. Alexis, sweetheart, Mrs. Thornton approached with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. We're so excited to finally make this official. Jake hasn't stopped talking about you. Mr. Thornton raised his martini glass. To new partnerships. Both business and personal. I accepted a glass of sparkling cider, they weren't stupid enough to give me alcohol, and touched the recording app through my clutch purse. The fake timer showed 23 minutes of study time already logged. Before we sit down to eat, Dad announced, Richard and I have some preliminary agreements to review. Just the broad strokes of our new ventures. The 2 fathers moved to the far end of the room with their lawyers, spreading contracts across a side table like battle plans. I caught fragments of their conversation, mineral rights consolidation, trust fund integration, and inheritance protection protocols. They were planning to merge more than just business interests. They were designing a financial cage that would trap me even after marriage. Don't worry about all that boring stuff, Jake said, guiding me toward the windows overlooking the golf course. That's just our dads being dads. This is about us. Of course, I said, letting him position me with my back to the room. From this angle, anyone watching would see an intimate conversation between young lovers, not a predator cornering his prey. Jake pulled a small velvet box from his jacket pocket. I know we haven't known each other very long, but sometimes you just know, right? When something is meant to be. The box opened to reveal a sapphire ring surrounded by diamonds, expensive, tasteful, and completely wrong for my hand size. He'd never even asked what I liked. It's beautiful, I managed, my voice carrying just enough wonder to satisfy our audience while my phone continued recording everything. It belonged to my grandmother. She always said it should go to someone who understands the value of family legacy. Jake took my left hand, his fingers cold and slightly damp. Someone who knows that love is really about building something bigger than yourself. Love. He was calling this love while our fathers negotiated my purchase price 20 feet away. Jake, I said softly, making sure my voice would carry clearly on the recording, can I ask you something? Anything. When you think about our future together, what do you see? His smile widened, and for a moment he looked genuinely excited. I see us carrying on both family traditions. Your trust fund, properly managed, could finance the Thornton expansion into renewable energy. My inheritance combined with your father's real estate portfolio could make us one of the most powerful couples in Connecticut. And what about children? Do you want kids someday? Eventually, sure. 2 or 3. But we'd do it right, none of this modern parenting nonsense where kids think they can just feel whatever they want. Jake's grip on my hand tightened. Your parents have some brilliant ideas about raising disciplined children. Kids who understand that emotions have consequences. My blood went cold, but I kept my expression interested and engaged. What kind of consequences? Financial accountability, mainly. Make them earn their emotional outbursts instead of just giving them away for free. He was warming to the topic now, completely oblivious to how monstrous he sounded. Emma used to throw tantrums constantly, crying over stupid stuff, getting hysterical about normal discipline. Now she's learned to control herself. How? Simple economics. Every inappropriate emotional display costs her something she values. Toys, privileges, social activities. She's much better behaved now. I thought about Emma's empty bedroom, her hollow expression in the school hallways, the way she flinched whenever anyone spoke too loudly near her. That's very practical, I heard myself say. Your mother's consultation has been invaluable. Emma's almost like a different person, quiet, respectful, emotionally stable. That's the kind of mother I want for our children. The recording app had now captured 28 minutes of Jake Thornton describing child abuse like it was a sound investment strategy. His words would be impossible to dismiss or reinterpret later. Jake, I said, stepping closer to him with what I hoped looked like romantic interest, I need to know something important before I can accept this ring. What's that? Are you doing this because you want me, or because our parents want the business merger? For just a moment, his mask slipped. The charming smile faltered, replaced by something calculating and cold. Does it matter? He asked quietly. We're both getting what we need. And what is it that I need, exactly? Security. Protection. A husband who understands your family's methods and won't try to change you. His thumb traced across my knuckles possessively. Let's face it, Alexis, you're damaged goods. What other man is going to want someone who was raised like a science experiment? The words hit me like a physical blow, but I forced myself to stay in character. Damaged goods. That's how he saw me, how they all saw me. You're right, I whispered, loud enough for the phone to catch every syllable. I am exactly what they made me. Jake's smile returned, triumphant and cruel. Then you'll take the ring. I looked at the sapphire glinting in its velvet prison, then at our fathers still hunched over their contracts, turning my life into a business transaction. I'll take it, I said. And I meant it, just not the way he thought. The ring felt like a shackle as Jake slid it onto my finger, his hands trembling slightly with what I assumed was excitement. The sapphire caught the chandelier light, throwing blue fractals across the white tablecloth like scattered tears. Perfect fit, he murmured, loud enough for our parents to hear. Like it was meant to be. From across the room, I heard Mom's delighted gasp and the soft clink of champagne glasses being raised. Dad's voice carried over the lawyer's murmurs, excellent. Now we can finalize the trust integration clause. Trust integration clause. They weren't just arranging my marriage, they were restructuring my inheritance to flow through the Thornton family accounts. Even my grandfather's money, left specifically to give me independence, would become another tool of control. Should we tell everyone the good news? Jake asked, his arms sliding around my waist possessively. Actually, I said, checking my phone's timer display, I'd love to hear more about your plans first. This is all happening so fast. Jake's eyes lit up with the kind of enthusiasm most people reserve for discussing their favorite hobbies. Well, obviously we'd live in the Thornton estate initially. The West Wing has been renovated specifically for young couples. Close enough for family guidance, private enough for independence. Family guidance. Translation, constant supervision. And my education. You'd finish high school, naturally. But college seems unnecessary, you'll have plenty to learn about managing household accounts and social obligations. His thumb traced over the ring on my finger. Your mother's already agreed to provide consulting on child-rearing techniques once we start a family. The recording app showed 34 minutes now. Every word was being captured in crystal-clear audio that would be impossible to dismiss later. Jake, can I ask about Emma? I've noticed she seems different lately. His expression hardened almost imperceptibly. Emma needed correction. She was becoming hysterical, attention-seeking. The kind of behavior that reflects poorly on the entire family. What kind of behavior? Crying fits over minor discipline. Excessive enthusiasm about trivial things. Inappropriate emotional attachments. Jake's voice dropped to a whisper meant only for me. She actually tried to hide a kitten in her room last month. Can you imagine? Sneaking around, lying to our parents, getting emotionally invested in something without permission. My chest tightened. What happened to the kitten? Donated to the animal shelter, obviously. Emma's emotional regulation improved dramatically once she understood the consequences of unauthorized attachments. He said it like he was discussing the weather. Your mother's techniques work remarkably well when properly implemented. How much does Emma pay now? For her emotions. Jake looked confused. Pay. Oh, you mean the accountability system. Emma doesn't use money, that's your family's approach. We prefer privilege removal. More efficient for younger children. Different methods, same result. Emma had been systematically trained to suppress every natural emotion, just like me. The beautiful thing, Jake continued, warming to his subject, is how well prepared you both are for marriage. No unrealistic expectations about romance or personal fulfillment. You understand that love is really about family stability and financial security. I thought about Miranda, probably sitting in her bedroom right now wondering if I was safe. About Mrs. Peterson, whose number was programmed into my phone's emergency contacts. About Janet Martinez, building a case that depended on evidence I was literally recording in real time. You're absolutely right, I said, letting genuine emotion creep into my voice, not the performed happiness my parents had always demanded, but something deeper and more dangerous. I do understand exactly what this is. Jake's smile widened, completely missing the warning in my tone. I knew you were different from other girls your age. More mature. More realistic about what marriage actually means. Which is partnership. Mutual benefit. Two families becoming stronger together. He gestured toward our parents, still deep in contract negotiations. Emotional fairy tales are for people who can't afford practical arrangements. 41 minutes of recording. Jake Thornton had just confessed to viewing marriage as a business transaction, described systematically breaking his sister's spirit, and outlined plans to control every aspect of my future life. The recording app continued running silently as our parents approached, contracts apparently finalized and champagne glasses refreshed. Well? Mom asked expectantly, her eyes immediately finding the ring on my finger. Do we have an engagement to celebrate? Jake's arm tightened around my waist. She said yes. The next few minutes were a blur of congratulations and toasts, business cards being exchanged between lawyers, and detailed discussions of wedding timelines. I nodded and smiled and played my part perfectly, all while my phone captured every incriminating word. But as the evening progressed, I noticed something that made my blood run cold. Emma Thornton, who I'd assumed was safely at home, was sitting alone in the club's main dining room. Through the private room's glass doors, I could see her picking at a salad, her movements mechanical and lifeless. She'd been brought here to watch. To see what happened to girls who didn't learn their emotional lessons well enough. The message was clear: cooperate, or end up like Emma. I excused myself to use the restroom, making sure my phone stayed behind to continue recording. But instead of heading to the ladies' room, I slipped into the main dining area. Emma. I approached her table carefully. Are you alright? She looked up with eyes that reminded me of my own reflection, careful, guarded, empty. I'm supposed to observe, she said quietly. For educational purposes. Educational purposes. They'd made her watch her own brother's engagement as a lesson in compliance. Emma, do you remember being happy? Before the rules. For just a moment, something flickered in her expression. Pain, maybe. Or hope. I'm not supposed to discuss inappropriate emotional states, she whispered. But her hand moved slightly, pushing her phone toward me across the table. On the screen was a text message from Jake, sent 20 minutes ago. Remember what happens to girls who don't appreciate family opportunities. Alexis made the smart choice. The threat was unmistakable. Emma wasn't just a cautionary tale, she was being used as leverage to ensure my cooperation. I quickly photographed the message and handed her phone back. Emma, I want you to remember something, okay? This isn't forever. She looked at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Then, so quietly I almost missed it, she whispered. The recording app works both ways. My heart stopped. Emma had been recording too. 3 days later, I sat in Janet Martinez's office watching my parents' world collapse in real time. The conference table was covered with evidence, printed transcripts of Jake's recorded confessions, bank statements showing payments to unlicensed consultation services, testimonials from 12 affected families, and Emma Thornton's secret recordings dating back 8 months. The state licensing board has issued cease and desist orders, Janet explained to the assembled parents. Catherine Hartwell, you're facing charges of practicing psychology without a license, child endangerment, and financial fraud. The consultation fees you collected, totaling $47,000 over 2 years, constitute illegal practice of mental health services. Mom sat rigid in her chair, the same controlled expression she'd taught me to perfect. But her hands were shaking, genuine emotion she couldn't budget away. The evidence is overwhelming, continued Detective Sarah Kim, who joined the investigation when the financial crimes came to light. We have recordings of Jake Thornton describing systematic emotional abuse as family values, texts threatening minors with punishment for normal emotional development, and documented proof that children were charged money for basic human expressions. Dad finally spoke, his voice hoarse. Everything we did was legal discipline. Parental rights. Parental rights don't include charging a 5-year-old 25 cents for laughing at cartoons, Detective Kim interrupted. Or billing a teenager $2 for crying when her dog died. That's not discipline, Mr. Hartwell. That's psychological torture. Through the glass wall, I could see Miranda and Emma waiting in the hallway with their parents. The cooperation had materialized quickly once the recordings became public. 8 families had come forward in the past 72 hours, all with similar stories of children becoming hollow, controlled versions of themselves. Alexis, Janet said gently, I know this is difficult, but I need to ask about your trust fund access. I pulled out my phone and showed them the email I'd received that morning. Ms. Hartwell, per court order, your trust fund will be released to independent management upon your 18th birthday, free from parental oversight. The previous co-trustee restrictions have been invalidated due to documented abuse of fiduciary responsibility. 47 days, I said aloud. In 47 days, I'll be legally free and financially independent. Mom's control finally cracked. You have no idea what you've done, she hissed. We prepared you for the real world. We taught you discipline that other children will never have. You taught me that my happiness was worth 25 cents, I said, standing up. You charged me $9 for being excited about college acceptance letters. You turned my childhood into a profit center and then tried to sell me to the highest bidder. The Thornton arrangement would have secured your future. Jake Thornton is facing criminal charges for threatening minors, Detective Kim said flatly. His texts to your daughter constitute harassment and coercion. The arrangement was conspiracy to commit human trafficking. The words hung in the air like smoke. Human trafficking. That's what they called it when parents sold their children for business partnerships. Mrs. Martinez, I said, turning away from my parents completely, what happens to the other kids? Mandatory family counseling with licensed therapists. Regular check-ins with child services. And Emma Thornton will be staying with her aunt in California while her parents face their own charges. Janet's expression softened. The healing process will take time, but all 12 children are receiving proper psychological support now. Through the window, I watched Emma smile at something Miranda had said, a real smile, free and unguarded. It was the first genuine expression I'd ever seen on her face. My phone buzzed with a text from the bank, trust fund transfer complete. Account balance, $847,329.18. Welcome to your independence, Ms. Hartwell. $800,000. Enough to smile whenever I wanted for the rest of my life. I looked at my parents one final time, Mom crying without permission, Dad's face gray with defeat, and felt something I hadn't experienced in 17 years. Pure, expensive, absolutely free joy. And I smiled. It didn't cost me anything. But it cost them everything.